My brothers and sisters. My sisters. We move from the parade of palms to the drama of Holy Week. And in this dramatic movement, we experience the darkness of what Jesus experienced, and ultimately the great depth and breadth of God, who so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. This is a 3-act passion play, with an intermission between Acts 2 and 3. Tonight is Act 1. Act 2 is tomorrow night on Good Friday. Holy Saturday is our intermission, and Act 3 will be conducted Sunday morning. Remember the night on which Jesus was betrayed, says the pastor as he lifts bread and wine at the altar. These words are the once upon a time for our story, the Passion of Christ. These words take us on a journey deep into the heart of God, whose divine action will change the world. Faith comes from hearing God's word, and hearing, we remember. Therefore, we are grounded in the power of remembering. But why should we remember betrayal, denial, torture, crucifixion, and death? Why should we remember the ugliness of humanity, filled with taunts and insults and derision? Perhaps it jogs our memory to remember the extent of Jesus' sacrificial love and his radical obedience to the will of God. We heard in our New Testament lesson last Sunday that Jesus was obedient to his Father's will, even to the point of dying on a cross. And so tonight, as we gather, our prayer life moves us to remember, and in so doing moves us from religious sentimentalism into the power and the depth of God's love and his longing, his earnest, rich longing to bring us back into a loving relationship with him. A relationship where we celebrate that he was willing to do anything to restore that relationship, rather than focusing on that which separated us from him in the first place. Our prayer of remembering invites you and me to live in this sacred moment by experiencing the drama firsthand. There's a great significance to our gathering around a table for a meal. It was wonderful last Sunday, following our Palm Sunday worship, to gather around the table back in the fellowship hall, not just because somebody was celebrating a birthday, not because somebody was going through a career transition, not because we were remembering the life of another one of our sisters here in grace, but because we were celebrating the life that God has given to each of us. The life that belongs to us as a birthright, as an inheritance. And it all begins in that upper room where Jesus speaks the words of freedom and liberty and redemption, and augments it by saying, "This bread and this cup are my body and blood, given for you. And every time you celebrate this, do so in remembrance of me." Now the disciples had to be a bit confused that first Passover night. Passover, being a celebration, was normally a time of rejoicing, singing happy songs, and praising God for his mighty redemptive action. And yet here is Jesus talking about his suffering and his death, and leading them from that upper room out into a garden where he would be betrayed and denied, tortured, and executed. Jesus knew what was going to happen. He provided this meal for the disciples so that they would have a tangible way to remember him. When we talked about Angie last Sunday, we were talking about two things. Our memories of her, and certainly we all have plenty, but also her legacy. Celebrating the kind of person she was and keeping that legacy alive by adopting it as our own. In the same way, we had Jesus tonight washing the feet of the disciples and asking, "Don't you know why I did this for you? You call me teacher." In the Family Feud, that would be a good answer. You call me Lord. In Family Feud, that would be the number one answer. Because that's who I am. But yet here I am, your teacher and your Lord, and I have assumed the duties of a slave to wash your feet. And if I have done that for you, then you should do that for others. A new commandment I give you, to love one another as I have loved you. That's why it was appropriate, Charlotte, that we celebrate that transition this past Sunday that you had. Because that's exactly what you have done for so many years. You have loved other people exactly the way your Lord called you to do. You have cared for them the way Jesus cared for you. You have become an extension of Christ's love into the lives of people who otherwise might never have known him. That's why I said to you, well done, good and faithful servant. But that doesn't let the rest of us off the hook. Because Jesus calls all of us to serve in the kingdom. Now we keep in mind that in Jesus' prayer, Luke records a very strange thing that Jesus says. "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me." Jesus is a man of prayer. And throughout the ministry stories that we have heard about him, we see that he remains connected to his Father, to do what God has called him to do. And that's why he continues in the second half of that verse, "But not my will, but thine be done." For me, as a 12-step person, that third step has always been the toughest for me. I have no doubt admitting that I'm an overeater and that my eating habits are out of control and unmanageable. There's no escaping the fact that there is a power greater than I, capable of restoring me to sanity. But it's that third step, when I consciously and deliberately give my will over to God as I understand him. For us here in church, isn't it the same way? We give something to God and we take it back. We're concerned, we give something to God, we take it back. We offer up our prayer to God, we take it back. Because we like to believe, just like I do, that we are in control. That we are the masters of our fate and our destiny. Like Julius Caesar, we say, "The fault, dear Brutus, lies not in our stars, but in ourselves." Or elsewhere, the quote that says, "I am the master of my fate, the captain of my soul." I'm in charge. I call the shots in my life. And we don't have enough time tonight for me to recite for you all the times and ways that that selfish arrogance has failed me. And so here we have the opportunity to mirror what Jesus was doing in Gethsemane by saying, "Father, I don't want to do this, but it's what you have called me to do. And so I submit to your will." Each and every one of us, in one way or another, doesn't want to serve God in the way God wants us to serve. We want to choose our own way to serve, or sometimes not to serve at all. But like Jesus, we too fall on our knees and say, "Not my will, but yours be done." May God help us as we make our prayers to him and dedicate our lives to his ministry. Amen. We worship God with our